Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett just did something I have never witnessed in a congressional hearing in all my years covering politics. She stood up in that committee room and said, point blank, with absolute clarity, I'm not even going to waste my time asking this Attorney General questions because she has proven beyond any shadow of doubt that she has no intention of answering them honestly. Instead of playing the usual Washington game with someone who refuses to engage in good faith, she did something brilliant. She turned to her colleague sitting right there and asked three devastatingly simple moral questions that any functioning adult should be able to answer immediately. Right or wrong, raping children? Wrong. Killing random citizens? Wrong. Enriching yourself as president? Wrong. Three questions. Three clear answers, apparently impossible for the Attorney General of the United States to provide on the record. Then she did something even more powerful. She turned directly to the Epstein survivors sitting in the rows behind the Attorney General, and she thanked them publicly for having more courage and moral clarity in their pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice has demonstrated throughout this administration. Then she started methodically going through the evidence from the Epstein files, FBI documents. Specific instances where Epstein brought young girls to Trump, Maxwell presenting minors to the president. And through every single word of it, Pam Bondi sat there absolutely silent. Let me show you exactly what happened in that room. Nice. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. To be clear, I'm not going to ask any questions of this witness because this witness has revealed she has no intentions of answering questions truthfully. Instead, I'm going to ask some basic questions of my colleague Becca Balint. Right or wrong, raping children? Wrong. Right or wrong, killing random citizens? Definitely wrong. Right or wrong, enriching yourself as the sitting president of the United States? Definitely wrong. Okay, thank you so much, because I probably never would have gotten those straightforward answers from our witness sitting here today. Our witness who somehow claims to be a lawyer but doesn't seem to understand how it actually works with witnesses in a courtroom or congressional hearing. I'm not really sure what law school she attended or what kind of cases she tried, but typically when you come into a space and somebody is a witness, they sit there and answer the questions asked of them instead of asking questions right back at you. We also have this objection we use as lawyers called non-responsive, when a witness deliberately fails to actually answer the question that was asked. But nevertheless, let me address the survivors in this room directly, because that's exactly who they are. They are not victims anymore. They are survivors. And let me say thank you for having more courage and more moral clarity in your pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice of the United States has shown throughout this entire administration. We are currently the laughingstock of the world, partially because of the failed leadership within the DOJ, as we watch governments fall everywhere, while we sit here unable to establish even the most basic concepts of right and wrong in this country. Because it's not supposed to be about partisanship, and that's precisely why I applaud Thomas Massie, because he's the only person on the Republican side of this committee that has shown he has a backbone and knows how to stand up to corruption when he sees it, regardless of party. My Democratic colleagues have been attacked throughout this entire committee hearing. They have been lied about, misrepresented, and frankly, the American people weren't looking for that partisan theater. They were looking for actual answers about the corruption coming from this administration. In your written testimony, in the testimony you submitted to this committee, you stated that when you took office, you had two main goals. The first was to end the weaponization of justice, and the second was to return the department to its core mission of equal justice under law. Not only have you lied about both of those stated goals, you have intentionally done the exact opposite of what you promised. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting journalists than you are prosecuting pedophiles and creeps. In fact, your boss, the President of the United States, stated publicly that this administration, quote, took the freedom of speech away, and at your direct direction, the DOJ has arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort for doing their jobs as journalists. And I might add that y'all had a federal judge reject y'all for trying to arrest Don Lemon before, just like the grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Kelly, just like a grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Slotkin. Just like the case against Tish James was dismissed, and the case against Mr. Comey was dismissed. I completely don't understand how it is that you're sitting at the top of the Department of Justice, because you don't seem to be particularly good at your job given your track record. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting these journalists. In fact, we know that after Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were arrested, we know that homes of journalists were raided by federal agents. We know that you threatened prosecution against students who were protesting your actions, and you forced tech companies to remove apps that were being used to track ICE activities and deportations. But let's circle back to you protecting pedophiles and creeps, because I want to talk specifically about the president and his possible involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I don't know exactly what the president might have done with Jeffrey Epstein, but unlike this administration, I actually believe that facts matter, evidence matters, so let's talk about the documented facts that are in the record. Fact number 1. Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contain more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, or Mar-a-Lago. That's not speculation. That's documentation. Fact number 2. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple documented occasions. For example, according to this file right here, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump, who spent more than 20 minutes apparently flirting with her. That's an FBI investigator notes. Here's another example from the files. This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein personally transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump, quote, "This is a good one." Now, I'm not sitting here saying that the president is a pedophile, but there is a significant amount of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who absolutely are pedophiles. What's crazy about all of this is just that this is a massive cover-up, and this administration is actively engaged in it. In fact, this administration is complicit in covering up evidence, but there are numerous other examples beyond just Epstein, like how the DOJ is attempting to obstruct justice in the investigation of the rogue agents who have murdered American citizens, or how the DOJ seized voter data from Fulton County in what appears to be an attempt to steal the 2026 midterm elections, or how federal agents have Tom Homan on tape accepting a bribe, and your agency deliberately killed the investigation into that corruption, or how your agency is preparing to give the president a $230 million payday, which is blatantly unconstitutional. The Constitution is absolutely clear on this point. The president shall not receive any payment except his official salary while in office, period. The fact of the matter is you will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history, an attorney general who has prioritized obstruction over justice, corruption over the law, and fealty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. And Mr. Chairman, I will yield back my time. Gentle lady yields. Gentleman from Missouri is recognized. Excuse me. Gentleman from Kansas, the Attorney General, former Attorney General, Mr. Schmidt is recognized. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General Bondi, thanks for being here today. Did you have anything you wanted to say before we get into our discussion? I do. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, my friend, for many years of service together. I find it interesting that she didn't even want to try, Congresswoman Crockett, to ask any questions of me, because she certainly did not condemn her leader, Hakeem Jeffries, for taking money directly from Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein was convicted. And I will be brief to give you back your time, Congressman. This is what she didn't want to talk about at all. Texas, from Cuba, convicted. Homicide, arson, weapon offense, convicted. So what we talking about? Convict some of these perpetrators that raped these women that are sitting belong to even acknowledge they are here. Time belongs to the gentleman from Kansas. Okay, stop right there. What you just witnessed is a sitting member of Congress presenting specific evidence from FBI files directly implicating the president in connections to Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking operation, and the Attorney General refused to say a single word about it. Not one word. Let me walk you through what Crockett actually said, because this is going to get buried and you need to know what evidence was just entered into the congressional record. First, Crockett made it clear she wasn't going to bother asking Bondi questions. Why? Because Bondi has spent this entire hearing dodging and deflecting. So instead, Crockett asked Congresswoman Balint 3 basic moral questions. Right or wrong, raping children? Wrong. Right or wrong, killing random citizens? Wrong. Right or wrong, enriching yourself as president? Wrong. 3 simple questions, 3 clear answers, apparently too difficult for the Attorney General. Then Crockett turned to the survivors and said something that hit me. She thanked them for having more courage and moral clarity in their pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice. Survivors of child sex trafficking showing more courage than the people running the Justice Department. That's where we are. Now here's where it gets really damning. Crockett said Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contain more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife or Mar-a-Lago. 38,000 references across 5,000 files. That's not a casual friendship. That's extensive documentation across thousands of files. Then she got specific, and this is where you need to pay attention. She said, according to the files, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. She gave specific examples. According to FBI investigator notes, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump, who then spent more than 20 minutes flirting with her. Let me repeat that. Maxwell presented a minor to Trump. Trump spent over 20 minutes flirting with that young girl. That's documented in FBI files. Here's another example. FBI investigator notes describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump. When Epstein brought her to Trump, he bragged, quote, "This is a good one." Think about what that means. Epstein brought a trafficking victim to Trump's property, and his words were, "This is a good one," like he was presenting merchandise, and all of this is documented in FBI investigator notes, not rumors, not speculation, FBI documentation. When Bondi was given the opportunity to respond, what did she do? She deflected to immigration. She talked about a convicted criminal from Cuba, sanctuary cities. Think about that. A congresswoman just presented FBI notes describing Epstein bringing a trafficking victim to Mar-a-Lago and bragging to Trump about her, and the Attorney General's response was to talk about sanctuary cities. Seriously. But Crockett didn't stop with just Epstein. She listed other examples of DOJ corruption under Bondi. The DOJ is spending more resources arresting journalists than prosecuting pedophiles. Under Bondi's direction, the DOJ arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. A judge rejected their attempt to arrest Lemon. Grand juries rejected cases against Senator Kelly and Senator Slotkin. Cases against Tish James and James Comey were dismissed. Crockett said it plainly. If you're at the top of DOJ and you keep losing cases, maybe you're not good at your job. Then she went further. The DOJ raided homes of journalists, threatened prosecution against students protesting, forced tech companies to remove apps tracking ICE activities. She circled back to protecting powerful people. The DOJ is obstructing justice in investigations of rogue agents who murdered American citizens. The DOJ seized voter data from Fulton County to interfere with the 2026 midterms. Federal agents have Tom Homan on tape accepting a bribe, and the DOJ killed the investigation. And the DOJ is preparing to give Trump a $230 million payday, which violates the Constitution's prohibition on the president receiving payments beyond his salary while in office. Every single one of those allegations deserves investigation. Every single one deserves a response from the Attorney General. And Bondi gave nothing. She sat there in silence. Then when a friendly Republican gave her time to respond, what did she talk about? A criminal from Cuba and sanctuary cities. Here's what this reveals about how this actually works. When Democrats ask about Epstein files, January 6th hiring, cryptocurrency enforcement, survivor exposure, Trump's financial conflicts, Bondi either refuses to answer or deflects to immigration. When Republicans ask questions, she gets friendly softballs and thanks them for their leadership. The hearing isn't about oversight, it's theater. Democrats present evidence. Bondi ignores it. Republicans rescue her with distractions. The chairman protects her. Nothing changes. And the specific evidence Crockett presented about Trump and Epstein, that'll get buried under headlines about immigration and culture wars. That's the strategy. Present damning evidence. Refuse to engage with it. Change the subject. Move on. But the evidence is now in the congressional record. 38,000 references to Trump in Epstein files. Maxwell presenting a young girl to Trump. Epstein bringing a victim to Mar-a-Lago and bragging to Trump. This is a good one. All documented in FBI investigator notes, all ignored by the Department of Justice. Crockett ended by saying Bondi will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history. An attorney general who prioritized obstruction over justice, corruption over law, and loyalty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. And based on what we just watched, she's right. When presented with specific evidence from FBI files about the president's connections to a convicted sex trafficker, Bondi's response was to talk about immigration. That tells you everything you need to know about what this DOJ actually is, and who it's designed to protect. If this breakdown showed you something the headlines won't cover, share this video. Make sure people know what evidence was actually presented and how it was completely ignored. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.